like 0 degrees. I'm out the cage, gotta let out the beast. Revolutionary, gotta let out the streets. Locked in the cage, I'ma let out the
welcome to another episode of the Launchpad. My name is Grant, and today I'm joined by a special guest, the director, the founder of GRIDLIFE, Mr. Chris Stewart. Chris, how you doing, sir?
I'm doing all right. How are you?
I'm good, man. Dude, I'm excited to talk with you. I know majority of the interviews I've done have been with like artists and DJs and producers and things like that. So I'm really excited to talk with you and kind of pick your brain a little bit about some of the things you do and like some of the stuff we were just talking about before I hit record here. I'm excited to like really dive into a lot of that. But before we get into all that, man, tell me a little bit about GRIDLIFE. Where did it start? How did you get involved with it? Where did the idea come from? I want the full backstory. Don't leave any details out for us.
Okay. I've got like I'll try and do there's a long version and a short version and a medium version. I'll try and find something kind of blending all those pieces together. But like really GRIDLIFE's just it's a mashup of everything that I'm into, right? So it was like kind of taking a whole lot of different passions and hobbies and like things that kind of sparked my curiosity and ultimately like blending it together into kind of this cohesive experience that is really like an event built for me. So it just so happens that like the event built for me has found fanfare amongst other people as well. Mm-hmm. So like my background professionally is as a creative director. So I worked in advertising, a lot of stuff on digital and a lot of digital experiential stuff. So I was doing like 3D projections on buildings and like different stuff that like was kind of both advertising but both immersive. And then two of my major passions just in hobbies was cars and racing, and also mopeds and motorcycles and things like that. I live in the city of Chicago, so I was into cars, and then when I moved into the city, I got into motorcycles. So just like fast stuff, cars and things like that. And then the other passion was music. I'm a big festival goer. I'm a huge fan of Phish, band Phish. So I've seen 237 Phish shows along with like hundreds of festivals, and also friends with a ton of artists, in the Chicago scene and things like that. So really the genesis is like all the things that I was into ultimately became kind of the pieces that make up, what GRIDLIFE is as an experience. But backing up a little bit, GRIDLIFE really started in 2004 with just the car side of things. And when we talk about GRIDLIFE, we talk about like we kind of slowly built a community that ultimately became, this festival experience. But back in 2004, my automotive hobby, I was getting into trying to get into like track racing. And for those that don't know, there's a bunch of racing circuits all over the country, and there's different groups that like rent them out, and you can go and drive your car, on a racetrack. And back in 2004, I had a Honda, a Civic, CRX, and the only places you could really go and race were like these BMW clubs and these Porsche clubs. So I went to a few events with those groups, and not that they weren't inviting, but it certainly like wasn't my people. I was a lot younger than everyone that was there. I had a different type of car, and just like music genres, the car community kind of has these segments and these preferences as well. So, back then I was trying to get into this hobby, finding it like I was getting into it, but it wasn't like vibing, and then a bunch of my other friends were trying to get into it too, and we found out you could rent a racetrack. So we all pooled our money together and we rented a racetrack on a Monday and through this event. And that was a Honda specific event. And you know, it was a big success. I mean generally, and what it allowed us to do was start to like build this community of younger people who were you know, into cars and wanted to get into this part of the hobby. You know, and it just started to like organically build. So flash forward to 2014, which was the first year that we did Grid Life. I'd been working in advertising. I was like thinking about things like in a more strategic fashion. You know, I had, you know, been going to a ton of fish shows and then like saw, you know, the rise of Bonnaroo and all the festivalization of things and kind of these multi-genre festivals and just like kind of that whole scene where, you know, that became, you know, just a thing, right? Like people were like, oh, what are you into? Festivals. Like, this is what I'm about. It's a part of my identity, just like skateboarding or cars or whatever. And then, you know, I mentioned previously, like, you know, car culture is kind of segmented up and divided, where there's all these different types of things that you can do with cars or ways that you can be into it. But a lot of times those things don't overlap, right? So like I'm into circuit racing, but some of my friends are into drifting. You know, and then I've got other friends that are just like into having a car and they like blast down the highway and like go from parking lot to parking lot on a Friday night, you know, and those groups, like very rarely do they like intersect or overlap. Like there isn't any events or things that kind of bring all those groups together. So that was the real like idea behind Grid Life, was like, hey, can I take, you know, kind of this festival culture and this music culture that I love and like kind of wrap it around this car culture that I'm into and try and bring different groups together, you know, and try to create context and like, you know, just like, you know, like at a Coachella or a Bonnaroo, you can like find artists that you normally wouldn't discover, or like get into new bands or new, you know, new DJs or new producers or whatever, just through like kind of that context. That's kind of what I was trying to do and what the idea was behind Grid Life. Like, let's bring drifters together with road racers, with like just general car people, and let's like kind of glue a whole party atmosphere around it. So even like individuals that like aren't in the automotive scene, you know, can be, you know, people that are just maybe a little car curious, like have something else, you know, to entice them, you know, and then let's like kind of bring all that stuff together, you know, to try to make the car culture cooler, more relevant, and more applicable to more people. So that was really like the genesis of it all, you know, and like the idea was like, I want to make an event that I want to go to, you know, effectively. Because even being into cars, you know, car events can get like kind of boring and sometimes are really corny, you know, and like they have a lot of like stigma and stereotypes around them. So we wanted to like cut all that stuff out and like, you know, really get to the heart of like, what are these festival communities about, and what makes me love going to fish shows or festivals and things like that, and try to like apply that to, you know, this, you know, this, you know, these other communities, and see if we can blend those things together. So that was the idea. And then 10 years later, we're chasing a boulder down a hill that like just keeps growing and growing. So
That's
yeah,
awesome,
yeah. I mean, I guess that's the full backstory. There's a lot more like kind of details in the build from, you know, where we started in 2014 and where we are now.
Yeah.
You know, but like we've always done, you know, kind of genres and music that we feel has like a wide appeal, or like just gets people moving, you know, and like a lot of people can kind of gather around. And that's what ultimately, you know, why we've been kind of gravitated towards more EDM lineups, is that, you know, they're visceral. They kind of like match the action that you're going to see on the racetrack, and it seems to like blend together well, you know.
Hey, and some of the most successful EDM festivals are held out there on racetracks too.
That's true. Yeah. So we're one of the few that like actually turns the racetrack on. You know. Like,
oh wow, that's dope.
Yeah,
that's
right.
really cool.
Yeah.
That's so cool that you're kind of taking like two worlds that you're pretty passionate about and finding a cool way to bring both of them together. That's like a really unique thing that I don't think a lot of people have the ability to do in their life. So that's awesome that you're able to create like a culture and a community around that kind of thing. That's awesome. I have a
Yeah.
question for you as somebody that knows very little about the automotive world. Since I'm talking with someone that has a lot more, experience and knowledge in that world, I want to hear from you, like, what's the biggest misconception that people have about the automotive world that might not necessarily be true?
I mean, I think that there's, like I said, there like automotive culture is just like music genres, right? Like, so it often can get like painted with a broad stroke. I mean, I think every time that I tell people what I do, they're like, oh, like NASCAR, and it's not like NASCAR. Like NASCAR is part of car culture, but it's like a different piece of it. And I think, like people think about like what those like mass appeal, representations of car culture, right? Whether that's like Fast and Furious, or like NASCAR or things along those lines. And they kind of, not knowing anything about it, they like paint it with a little bit of a broad stroke, based off of like those things. So I think that's probably like the biggest, I don't know if I like call it a misconception, but it's like an assumption that people make, like not like kind of understanding, the bits and pieces of it. And the place where we play, in car culture is more like deeper than that, so it's like, it's like if NASCAR is the radio hits, we're the underground, if that makes sense, so like when people come to GRIDLIFE for the first time, especially like the different pieces of it, it's like usually pretty eye-opening. I mean, as long as they're like not anti-automotive, it's going to open up like a whole like, new understanding and new appreciation and new context to like the things that people are passionate about in car culture, right? Especially like drifting in particular is really easy to understand. It's like super visceral and like really impressive. And, it's like these cars that make a bunch of noise and they make a ton of smoke and they're like almost like dancing, as they like kind of slide around the track. And it's like, I don't care who you are, it's really cool to see, so it's kind of like the way that I think about it and the way that we produce it and the way that we like present those stuff is it's like, if we look at like an event like Lost Lands, and it's a bass music festival, like wrapped in this dinosaur theme, and and we're just kind of something similar on a little bit smaller scale, but we're just wrapped in an automotive theme, like, kind of wrapping it up in race cars and drifting and like, that type of thing. And, I mean, certain segments of car culture too, there's like an art to it, there's like people are very intentional about like how they build their cars and what they do with their cars. And I think, when you see it in person and you can kind of touch these things, and like see them in use, it gives like anybody, like kind of a new appreciation for it.
Yeah, new appreciation, new perspective, a little eye-opening for some people, I'm sure.
Yeah.
That's awesome, man. I'm gonna flip the question. As someone that's also passionate about music and festivals as well, what's the biggest assumption or misconception that people have about the music world or the festival scene?
Yeah, I mean, I think that like, it's probably not much different than, than the behaviors and the misconceptions that like people within the music scene have about the music scene, where it's like, bad lineup, oh, that artist, this artist, like, so it's a lot of that, type of stuff. And then I think, the additional things that with the car community is like, a lot of them, like aren't experienced necessarily in festival culture. So we're bringing like really big artists within, the music industry and within the festival community that they might not have heard of. Right. So I think, it was interesting. Like, I think, every year, like everybody complains about every lineup from every festival everywhere. Right. So you can't really please them all, and typically what we've done with our lineups, like in the past, is we're more EDM centric, but we like also mix it up. So like we'll do like Getter, Oliver Tree and Getter on the same stage, and like, like things like that,
Okay.
right? So they like kind of make sense together, but it's like a little bit of a jump, right? So we're like
Yeah.
trying to appeal to a bunch of different people. And then this year, we went kind of all in, not only like all in on dance music, but like all in on bass music,
Yeah.
like kind of singularly into like one genre, and it's not the first time that we've skewed that way, but like, like basically the way that we usually build lineups, because we try to craft something that's really special and intimate and feels like an event that you belong to or are part of, not just one you attend. So like there's a lot of thought that goes into how we craft the lineups and stuff. But usually it ends up like I'll chase a singular artist, and then if I'm able to lock them, then I start to like build everything around it. And then this year, we specifically chased Subtronics, and then we were able to get Subtronics on the lineup. So I'm like, all right, now let's start building around this, right? Like let's get Sullivan, like let's get Wooly, let's get this, and then it all just kind of dominoes and trickles down from there. And then it's almost like building a playlist, like what's going to sound good together, like what's going to go from one to the other.
Yeah.
And the thing that I noticed this year is that there was so much hype from the existing community around the artists that we booked, that anyone that was unfamiliar with them, or like would normally be like, who, like was maybe afraid to say that because like everyone was so stoked.
Mm-hmm.
They were like, oh man, you guys killed it, this is a great lineup. So there was so much like excitement around the package of artists we put together, that I think people who normally would have been like a little bit more dismissive or more loud about that, like were maybe afraid to do so they didn't seem dumb or whatever. So I think that's it's not any different than any other like group, when it comes to like the music side. It's just like everybody always tells you who to book, and who you should book and why this artist is better or this, that, and the other thing. So like, the car community is no different. They I think, a big thing about the car community is that it's wide, like a wide spread of interest, right? There's like, EDM kids and hip hop kids and emo kids, and, they like a lot of different types of stuff. So, I think the like final destination for GRIDLIFE is something that's multi-stage and multi-genre and can really like begin to kind of appeal to the wider tastes of everybody, but for now we're feeling pretty good about kind of in the EDM lane.
Yeah, you should feel. I kind of want to talk a little bit more about that too. Just like this lineup specifically. Obviously, you mentioned a lot of the guys on there already: Subtronics, Wooly, Sullivan King, Boogie T, tons of other guys on there too. And you kind of touched on it a little bit already, but I'm hoping you could kind of expand a little more. Like you said that you kind of build your lineups typically like chase after that one artist that you want and kind of build a lineup around them. I think that's a genius way to do it, and I think all festival organizers should kind of follow that mold and structure whenever they can. But why Subtronics, and why the focus on EDM and bass music this year specifically?
Well, I mean, I think we're a camping festival, so like the GRIDLIFE is best experienced over multiple days, and just thinking about like the current like music communities that are open-minded or like open to experiences and things like that. So like I think we kind of targeted in like we've had bass-centric artists on the lineup. We've had Boogie T before. We had Getter a few years ago. And we've never really like taken that full leap. So we kind of decided like, all right, let's try and go bass this year, right? So we like kind of started with the genre, right? And then we were kind of looking at artists like, all right, there's other things that we consider too. Like we also think about, if we have some knowledge of the artists themselves or the team that they're a part of, and think they might have an appreciation for the event that we build, like that goes a long way too, So I think, based off of like, we've been working with a collective this year for talent buying, So they're responsible for North Coast out of Chicago and a whole lot of other festivals as well. So I was working with them, just kind of trying to brainstorm, what artists would kind of fit the bill, like knowing that we were going to try and anchor and cornerstone with someone from the bass community, and Subtronics, kind of kept circling back, right? So we had a few different irons in the fire, Subtronics was just the number one preference. He's been killing it recently, got a really good community that's like surrounding the shows and the events that he's doing, kind of continually on the rise, know that it was kind of almost like a hunch, that I think that this audience will like what we do, right? And kind of trying to hedge the bets against that. So, a lot of different things considered when we're looking at artists that we chase, and a lot of times we chase artists that we can't get, that's 100% a thing. And the thing about we don't have an unlimited budget. We have to be pretty frugal with how we put our event together, and we also don't have unlimited time, right? We're kind of a one main stage, event. So, we've got, 4 slots a day effectively for artists that are going to make impact. So we have to aim true, so to speak. And
I got to be a little strategic about it too, I'm sure.
Yeah, 100%. So so we knew we were going to do something a little bit more bass centric. We were playing with a few different artists. We ultimately got Subtronics team, on the hook with a conversation. They were into it, a little bit back and forth, and we were able to kind of get a verbal that down to do it. So then we leapt into that, and then we kind of look at all right, what are the artists that this artist is collaborating with, who are their friends, and we want to kind of, with those limited amount of slots, kind of look at and try to craft an event with people that they know and kind of build, a squad, so to speak. So, all that stuff we're thinking about. And then, when we were talking about for this year, maybe we'll go real bass heavy on Friday, and then we'll kind of mix it up and do, a different genre or something a little bit, more big room or a wider appeal or something. Last year we had Cascade, which is one of the widest nets you can cast in dance music, So, everybody loves Cascade unless they don't, but if they don't, they're probably jaded and they don't love anything, or whatever. Right. Yeah. So, but we decided as far as communities that are open to new experiences and are going to be willing to kind of commit to a multi-day event and are going to be into camping and into that kind of, the totality of the scene that is a multi-day, camping festival, we decided to kind of go all in on bass and try to get people that were excited to come, on Friday for Subtronics a reason to stay. And that's why we kind of stuck with the genre and put the 2 days together, so that it becomes something that you have, things that you're into to look forward to both nights, and then, that gives us too, an opportunity to really educate people and I mean, that sounds a little formal, educate, but it gives an opportunity for them to discover the other side of the coin, right? Which is, this automotive culture and those things, right? And they can, some of the other stuff that we do at the festival, it's not just cars on, then music on, it's all kind of blended together, and designed, just any, really large scale festival where you're kind of wandering around. You're oh, look at that. Oh, remember that thing? Oh, this cool, look at that cool thing over there. So that 2 o'clock in the afternoon, by the time you get to 2 in the morning, feels like 2 days ago, that's the goal, that many things, that many different people to talk to, that many different, experiences to be had and people to meet and kind of overlaps to be had, throughout, the entire weekend experience. So, Yeah, I know, that was a little rambling, but
No, it's good, man. You're saying really cool stuff. I'm very fascinated by a lot of the stuff you're saying. You're giving me like a whole new perspective. Like I mentioned before, a majority of the conversations we have on these are with artists and like DJs and producers. So it's really cool to kind of hear the perspective from somebody like that's still, in the industry, but obviously like kind of in a different realm of the industry. So that's really,
yeah,
really cool to hear.
yeah, I like sit on the fringe of the music industry, right?
Mhm.
Because we do stuff within the music industry, but like like we're like the GRIDLIFE Festival, the one that we're talking about specifically, is
Mhm.
one event in a series of 16.
Yeah.
So we have 16 events that like serve the automotive community, and then we have 2 events that like serve both,
Mhm.
right? So it's like kind of taking all the pieces that I know about both and like blending them together. So like I'm a little bit of a music industry outsider that like works inside of the music industry. So like
Yeah.
I feel like I've got a slightly different perspective because I like don't I'm not like booking shows every week.
Mhm.
So like I got to be like careful and crafted and like strategic
Yeah.
and thoughtful. Like I got 2 shots a year. To make it happen. So.
Fair enough, man. I want to ask, so this obviously Good Life been going on for quite a while. You guys said 2014, I believe, was the first year that you did
Yep.
the first one there. We're 2023 now. I don't know why I checked the clock like like the day, like the year was going to change
time,
during this interview.
time flies. Right.
But we're going on, what'd you say, like 10 years of this now?
This will be
What's been
the 10th year.
yeah, 10th anniversary, like what's been the biggest noticeable change that you've seen from 2014 to now?
Man, like I know too much now. I guess so. Like I look back at like 2014 and like how scrappy that event was, and like how glued together, and like it was. I mean, it all like at the time it was like we did it, but like I look at it by the standards of like the standards that we have now based off of all the knowledge we've obtained over the last 10 years. And I look back at like those first years and I'm like, man, that was rough, like, so I think just like the biggest changes that we do, like the events have gotten bigger, I think that first year was like 2,200 people, and now, we're, 15,000 over the course of the 3 days, so it's grown substantially. But the last like few years, the biggest improvements and the biggest investments that we've been making are all like in things that you don't see or things that you can't promote, So it's like GRIDLIFE now with like a top shelf parking and trash team. Like you can't put that on a flyer, and you can't put, top level, like new security director and security protocols, and like I'm not going to market all the like township politicking that we do. Like it's not marketable. It all ends up like paying dividends, and like how much better the experience is for the attendees, and how much smoother it is to like get in and out of the festival, or like how much better parking was, or like the bathrooms are cleaner, and it's like all these little details that people notice, but they kind of pay dividends the year after. So I think those are like the biggest things that have changed, right? Like I look at like how we produced the event, 2014, 15, and 16, and like like I don't know, I like it was almost like with innocence, like putting those together at that time. So I think and then obviously just like scale, right? Like at that time we were doing 2014, we did 1 event, then we had 3 events, and then I think like 5 events, and now there's 16 this year. So like GRIDLIFE, the organization, we went from being Midwest based to now nationwide. I'm in upstate New York right now, and we're gonna have a full house. We're gonna be doing 2 events in California this year. We've done some events in California in the past, but all those are like selling really, really well. So it's it's just so like kind of the expansion of that community that we started way back in 2004, of, you know, like-minded individuals that like, you know, found a place to be where they could build friendships and like, you know, have that kind of belonging around, you know, the stuff that they were into. So like, I think, you know, that's the biggest thing. It's like, it's got this organic flow and feel to it, which is, if I think about like everything that like makes this up, like intentional or not, you know, it like goes back to festival community and like kind of those feelings that I had of like belonging when I went to my first festivals and my first shows, you know, way back in high school, you know, and like that's the core nugget of like what we strive for.
Yeah.
Is like we've been using this phrase vibe or die, which is like the way that we like measure the success of the event is not, I mean, we obviously like, it's a business and it has to sustain, you know, and we have to like exist, you know, but like the first point of measurement is vibe and energy. Like, was that a good event? Good vibes, you know, like, so yes, you know, that's the first checkbox, you know, and then we run through all the rest of the stuff. So like, yeah, I don't know how I like got onto vibes. I don't even remember what the question was.
I like it. Vibe or die. I'm gonna put that in my bio. I like that. I want to kind of go back to a little bit of what you were talking about there with you know, just overall like festival community and engagement and like that sense of belonging. What does that kind of like mean for you, and like how does that inspire you in your, you know, like day to day with everything that you're doing and helping put together kind of thing?
Yeah, I mean, it's just the first like consideration, you know, like, and it's, you know, it's not like a strategic initiative, you know, it's just like the way that we, like me and my co-founder in this is an individual named Adam Jabay. So he's like more on the motorsport side. He like runs the racetrack, and he has some passion for music, but he has a lot of passion for motorsport. You know, and like him and I are both, you know, kind of empaths, and we like think about the experience of like everybody, you know, and you know, I think like in day to day, yeah, just that consideration for you know, the actions that we have, and like kind of, you know, this energy out, energy in kind of philosophy about the way that we do things, you know. So you know, that really is like what drives, you know, everything that we do. Like if you ask us what the product is, like what do we sell? We sell community, right? Like it takes shape in a bunch of different ways. It takes shape in, you know, a music experience or a racing experience, or, you know, both, or, you know, new friendships that you find, you know, within kind of these shared passions of, you know, car culture or music culture, or both of those things. You know, so I think, you know, our like the mission statement officially is motorsports inclusion. You know, and I think just the second half of that of like inclusion, you know, is what we like aim for, you know, in all things, right? Like I think somebody from the music side that's like looking at our event and like, what is this? Oh, I'm not into cars, or like I don't understand car stuff. You know, like our intention is for inclusion and kind of the delight of all, you know. So yeah, I think we try to carry that torch through like everything that we do.
I like that. It's a good answer. Do you have like a particular moment or experience at a music festival particularly that kind of stands out to you, or one that's super memorable for you, either as like a, you know, a director founder kind of thing, or just as a normal attendee at a festival?
I mean, for GRIDLIFE, I think there's a lot of like really memorable moments where, you know, like I'm looking out on the crowd and like it's not like I'm not that reflective of an individual, and I'm kind of working all the time, you know, which I think is common of like a lot of founder type entrepreneurial people, where they're just like, all right, great next, you know, and you're just kind of looking forward, and you're walking, and you're you know, walking at a fast pace all the time, like kind of pushing forward. But I remember like one in particular, it was maybe 2015, 2016. It was 2016. I think we had Herobust on the lineup, and like that was right when he started popping. And I remember like looking over the crowd, and they were going wild, you know. And I was like, holy shit, we built this, you know. Like, so that was cool, you know. It was like this moment of realization of like, wow, like all that struggle and I mean, GRIDLIFE was like built in my basement. I was like working out of my basement at that time. Like we have an office now, but that was like, I'd like hang out with my wife, come home from work, hang out with my wife for a little bit, and then go into the basement, and like work on GRIDLIFE. So I remember that moment. And then, I think, I saw my first concert on my own in my first Fish show, in 10th grade. And, I think that band in particular, and like I've got so many like kind of experiences around, following that band and kind of moments that are like super spiritual. And I can think about that, like the first year, first years of Bonnaroo were like that as well, and like a bunch of times when I've seen like Radiohead and like other artists that like I was super, super, super into, and I just got back from LA where I went and I saw 4 Fish shows out there this last week, and I'm already like, I've got like a hangover, like almost like heartbreak after it a little bit, so like it's really
how
cool.
How many Fish shows have you been to, man?
237.
200. You have to be like in that top like 0.1% of listeners.
I don't know,
right there.
like Fish is a cult. There's other bands that are cults like that, but you see a lot of like similarities in kind of some of the bass culture and like people who are like talk about sets and this set's better than that set, and it's like all those artists like that, whether it's Fish or anything in like the jam scene, and I'm not particularly that into jam bands. I'm just like into Fish, or anything in like a lot of stuff in EDM where people are like, you can kind of take what you need from it, right? So like you have the experience of music and that communal, kind of shared moment, and then like with artists like Fish or even with DJ sets, you kind of have the statistics of it. So if you're like into baseball, or like stats nerds, you can be like, oh man, they haven't played this in 52 shows, or like, man, did this drop, so it's like it's like the variety and mix of that stuff. But like, I don't know, I was talking to my friends on Sunday, where I was like, man, like this is show whatever, like this is the 4th show in a row, and like it's still just as good as like I can remember, like I'm still getting it, like whatever that is, whatever that thing that kind of fills my soul, it's still happening, and I think that's awesome, like to be able to like have that.
237 shows. Do they put on a different show every time? Every single time it's different.
Every single time. Single time.
That's impressive, right there.
Every single time, every single song is played differently. So like, I mean, there's 9. I mean, we can go on a whole Fish podcast tangent if you want, but there's 900 songs in their repertoire. They don't play all of those.
I did not realize they had that many.
They played 900 songs. They're also 40 years old. This is the 40th year for that band, So yeah, I mean, like, I don't know, like they've got like this little app that the community actually manages, and it like does push notifications as the shows are happening, and it would be like, oh, no quarter, hasn't been played in 24 shows, last played in 2018, and then every show gets like a jam chart and like a rating, and like each song gets like its own statistical details, and so it's a very like fluid experience and community to be a part of, because it does have so much variance, like there's good shows, and all the shows are good shows, but there's great shows. Like this last weekend, the shows were great. They were great shows. And like, you also like look at, they play usually 3 nights at one venue. So like the show is kind of the weekend, right? Like you could go to like one of the 3 nights, but really like the experience is all 3, like how they bookend together and like, and all that stuff. So I don't know. But it's the idea, like the idea of like that moment and that shared experience, and the things that cultivates is like the pieces that I borrow and the equity that I borrow to like put into the things that I do with GRIDLIFE.
Okay, I like that. I got another question for you that we always ask everybody that we have on here. At Moon Landing, we're really big on gratitude and just being thankful for all the little blessings we have in life every day. It's a blessing to be able to, work in the music industry, and in your case, work in the music industry and in the automotive industry. So I got a three-part question for you. I usually make this a two-part question, but since you're involved in two little industries, I'm going to make it a three-parter. What are you thankful for in the music industry? What are you thankful for in the automotive industry? And what are you thankful for in just your personal life in general?
Oh man. Okay. So I mean, I think like a broad application to all three is, just the ability to be involved at some level, right? Like all, like, so life is life. So like that's not a career, that's existence, but like, both the automotive industry as well as the music industry are both passion industries, right? So they're both industries that are usually like rooted or attached to hobbies or things that people are passionate about, like things that they want to be a part of. So I think it's a blessing anytime that you get to like partake and participate in any one of those like passion industries, right? And like I think anything can kind of be a passion industry at this point, like you can dive deep into anything, but like it's a blessing not to be like engineering like chips for vacuums, or something. Like being able to do and to work across like two things that I carry love for is 100% a blessing, and I'm super grateful for that. And then I think being able to within the music industry, being like a music fan first, and then being able to like kind of craft some of my existence around that and like meet individuals, and not necessarily like artists, but like, like I really like the inner workings of stuff, and like the last time I went to Bonnaroo, for example, was 2019, and I had like a production pass. So I was like just walking around, like looking at all the back end and like how the machine turns, like how all these gears work together. So I think I'm super grateful that like I get to meet people and learn from people within the industry and kind of, have mentor friends, throughout, that are like 1 degree away from, the things that I like did for fun, up until a point. So like that's super rad, and I think the same thing goes for car culture too, right? So there's, the drivers that we have out at our events, are in some cases like have larger fan bases and bigger followings than any of the artists that are on those stages, and to be able to like call some of those individuals my friends and like be, tied into that community and also help like shape its future, and like bring energy to it. I mean, I think there's kind of two sides of like, when it comes to car culture, people like are kind of worried about its prevalence, into the future, right? With not necessarily electric cars, like we embrace electric cars. We have like an electric car class. We have a Model 3 Tesla racing series, we're cool. So we're all about it, but like I think sometime in the future, like we're not going to be driving. We're going to be riding around in bubbles, like 50 years from now. So like, I think to be able to like kind of bring more attention and more energy and kind of new people into, at least having an understanding of the passion and pieces of the car community is really special. I'm super grateful for that. And then on the personal side, the one thing that like, while this, building Grid Life and traveling to all these places and the amount of time and energy and late nights, is a lot. It also gives me freedom of time a little bit, so I have the ability, yes, I have to travel to all these places, but also I get to travel to all these places, so like, so like it's a, like that's really, really special to like not necessarily beholden to a time clock and have to work a 9 to 5, even though like I kind of work 9 to 5. That's probably the biggest thing. And then I don't know, just being able to like bring people together. Like, you know, I talked about like, it's only in certain moments where like I stop and I'm like reflective about like what the things that we built, like what they mean to the people who are a part of them, you know, and like I look around at like the drivers, you know, that are, you know, building a hobby, you know, and like spending a whole lot of time and a whole lot of resources just to hang out with us.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's rad, you know,
Right.
like it's awesome to be the, you know, the facilitator of that. So
Hang on, sorry, audio cut out right there. Can you hear me okay?
yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, cool. I guess I was just on my end for a sec. Unless you were pranking me and just you know, moving your mouth
No.
over and over with no words coming out.
No. No, I was just saying like that hopefully that answered the three-parter.
Oh no, for sure it did. Yeah, that was good answer for sure. Anything else you want to touch on or talk about or shout out before we kind of wrap things up here?
I'm not super good at shout outs. You know, and I probably should shout out some of our sponsors, but I'm you know, like talking about the festival itself. I mean, I think I guess you know, for the audience that like you know, likes the artists that are on our lineup, you know, but is kind of unsure about the car side of it, like you know, I would say we'd love to host you and see you out there. And I think we could definitely like turn on the car curiosity in almost anyone, you know. So, you know, I'm excited because I think there's a lot of new people that are going to be coming to our event this year for the first time. You know, like kind of based off of the buzz of the lineups and the chatter that I'm seeing. So I'm really excited to kind of welcome new people into the you know, the grid life community and hopefully, you know, build some new grid lifers out of it that you know, come back year over year.
What are you looking forward to most with this year's lineup and festival here?
Just the like the crowd type. I know that like they've got you know, like the fan base you know, for these artists is just fired up. So like I'm excited about the energy that's going to bring and how that's going to resonate and like ripple through, you know, all the people who are like bringing that energy, and then all the individuals that are going to witness that for the first time. You know, I think it'll be like a very, very cool you know, kind of blend of things. So I'm just excited for, you know, those shows and those sets to pop off.
Yeah, man, I'm excited for you, man. This sounds like this is going to be a big year for Grid Life here. I think it's going to be a big year of growth from all the things you've been telling me, and it just sounds like a great year overall for you personally in general. So I'm excited to see all the big success that is hopefully coming your way here soon.
Yeah, thanks, man. I appreciate it.
Well, all right, man. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time with us and chatting with us about grid life and about the car world and all that stuff we talked about. I appreciate, you know, I know you got a busy schedule, so even just you making like half an hour, let alone like the full hour that we took here to talk about all this stuff and give us that cool little insight is awesome. So I know I really appreciate it. I'm sure all the listeners appreciate it too.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me. You know, it's always cool when you know, we get to kind of share, you know, our story and our little kind of slice of the world with you know, with new people. So appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, of course, man. Well, for those still listening, thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Launchpad. My name's Grant, and this was Chris Stewart.
Cheers.
Cold like 0 degrees. I'm out the cage, gotta let out the beast. Revolutionary, gotta let out the streets. Locked in the cage, I'ma let out the